Hey, UFC fans, have you been following this Chris Curtis stuff? He seems to be losing fans and fans by the day, and honestly, I'm one of them. We're going to talk about Chris Curtis in just a second. Before we get into the video, though, I do want to say hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with too many YouTube channels. Let's talk about Chris Curtis. So, the original post that I saw that made me want to make this video is Chris Curtis. Well, first of all, I actually saw it on Reddit saying that Chris Curtis was throwing a tantrum, and then a bunch of people were like hopping on saying the same thing. So I went and checked his Twitter, as always, because he's a very active guy on Twitter. He posted this, and along with a lot of other things that I'm not going to show, but this is just, you'll get the point through this. He gets moved to rank 11 for that BS when I for sure wouldn't have. Just proves it's about the story that Kelvin is back. What a joke. And Chris Curtis, here's the thing. He is getting a reputation of being one of the most sorest losers in the UFC. I understand what he's saying, but should you keep that stuff to yourself? Because it doesn't really do anything for him besides get attention, but it's all negative attention. It's like, do you want that attention or do you just want negative attention? It's tough to say what he's going with. I feel like he's just upset in general, which I guess it's understandable. He could be right in this tweet, honestly. But here's the thing, and this is the problem about Chris Curtis. People already had a little bit of a distaste for him in that Jack Hermansson fight because Jack Hermansson was piecing him up and he was walking forward, flipping him off and like, come on, calling him. I believe he was calling him a coward. If he was calling him something, he was calling him names, but I think it was coward. He was like, come on, you coward, backing up. But the problem was Chris Curtis was just upset that he was losing that fight and Hermansson was backing up. And yeah, Hermansson was backing up, but Hermansson was also piecing him up in that fight. Hermansson looked great in that fight. So people already had a little bit of a distaste for Chris Curtis in that. And I personally looked at him different from that point on too. I loved Chris Curtis coming onto the scene. And you know what? I don't dislike him now. It's just I'm no longer like a huge fan of Chris Curtis. You know, he seems like such a cool guy. I watch his interviews and stuff. I like watching like the videos of him and Sean Strickland together. I find that pretty like interesting. You know what I mean? But every single time I saw Chris Curtis, especially when he came onto the scene, like when he won his first, was it the first fight in the UFC that he won? Where he's like, "Oh, Joe Rogan, I've been waiting to hear you say that for so long." You know, it was so wholesome. And from that moment on, I was like, oh man, I really love this dude. And I was following Chris Curtis and I was cheering for him every single time, including that Jack Hermansson fight. But then my mind completely changed about him when I saw that Jack Hermansson fight. And I was like, oh, this doesn't seem like him. He seemed like a really, really happy guy. What's going on? This isn't the Chris Curtis that I've been watching. Or is it the Chris Curtis? And now Chris Curtis has taken that and now he's being salty about his Kelvin Gastelum loss, which I thought he lost too, by the way. And it's totally fine to be upset about a loss. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But the problem comes when Chris Curtis is continuing this behavior. If you go take a look at his Twitter, he's responding to random people, just saying things like, you know, eat a D word. You know, he's responding to random people in his comment sections. That is not a good look. It's different if you're replying and you're like joking around or like interacting with your fans. But he's responding to people being salty. That's not a good look. You're a professional UFC fighter. And you know what? Can you do it? Absolutely. I mean, I was about to say there's nothing wrong with that, but don't you want to get some fans? You're not really going to get any fans except the people who are like ridiculously hardcore or like maybe know you or people who appreciate your fighting style. And I appreciate his fighting style. I think he's a very exciting fighter. This dude was on track to be one of my, like, I have a lot of favorite fighters, but, like, I understand how this says, because I was going to say, like, top 20 or so UFC fighters. But honestly, like, I feel like I've built a relationship online with a lot of these fighters, and I'm sure, like, you hardcore MMA fans as well, if you're watching this, understand where I'm coming from. We all have our favorite fighters. I have a very long list, and Chris Curtis was up there, man. He was so happy, cheerful, exciting, loved watching him fight, and he still kind of is those things. But I feel like I'm seeing, like, it is kind of like a fake face that he puts on now. It's not too late for him to turn back the clock because he's still not relatively well known except within the hardcore MMA community. So I hope Chris Curtis turns it around. And even like when you go around and watch different Chris Curtis interviews, he's very cool. Like he has a big smile on his face. He's joking around with people. I love it. But then when you see him on social media and him responding to fans just talking trash, and everybody that's talking trash to him it's almost warranted because Chris Curtis is like being salty about his loss, especially after the Jack Hermansson fight. He can't continue going down this path. And I really like Chris Curtis. I don't dislike him, but I might with time if he continues this. Maybe he's just upset. I don't know, especially because, I don't know, there was a really good story about Kelvin being back, and you know what? He may have a point there. I ultimately did think he lost, but still, This isn't a good look, man. This isn't a good look. This is where I want to leave it up to you guys, though. Let me know what you think down below. Do you think this is a good look for Chris Curtis? Do you think it's, like, weird of me to care that what he's tweeting? I don't necessarily care, but it's just, like, I'm a little bit sad, though, because, like, I was a huge fan of Chris Curtis, and this is turning me off from him a little bit. I'm really glad Kelvin won. I'm a big fan of Kelvin, so there was one of those fights when I was watching, and I was like, oh, man, I don't really want to watch either guy lose. But then again, Chris Curtis just threw a tantrum against Jack Hermanson, so I guess I'll cheer for Kelvin. Kelvin's one of my favorite fighters. Actually, one of my favorite fighters. But the point is, I love Chris Curtis. I loved Chris Curtis. He's awesome. He has the potential to be something really, really special in the UFC, personality-wise, and fighter. Like, he's a great fighter. But again, let me know if I'm just weird for looking into this, or if you guys feel the same way about Chris Curtis. So please comment down below. Let me know what you think about Chris Curtis. Does his attitude matter to you, or do you just watch him fight? Let me know what you guys think, and thank you so much for watching this video, everybody. On the screen right now, we will have 2 fantastic MMA videos for you to check out. Check them out right now. They're great videos. I will see you there. Take care.